Ethan Cole signed the divorce papers with a hand so steady it frightened him. He had imagined rage, grief, or some final plea rising in his chest, but there was only emptiness. Across the polished desk, Vanessa adjusted the silver bracelet he had once given her on their third anniversary. She did not look ashamed. If anything, she looked impatient. "Can we finish this today?" she asked the lawyer, as though she were waiting for a delayed train. Ethan stared at the familiar curve of her handwriting on the forms. 10 years of marriage had ended in a few practice signatures. 2 months earlier, he had come home early with flowers and found her in their bed with Marcus Hale, the friend who had stood beside him at their wedding. Since then, humiliation had traveled through town faster than truth. Neighbors lowered their voices when he passed. Men clapped his shoulder with pity. Women offered sympathy sharpened by curiosity. He signed the last page and stood. Vanessa finally met his eyes. "You'll be better off," she said. "You were never happy in that small life." Small life. Ethan had worked double shifts, repaired their home with his own hands, and missed holidays to keep bills paid. He had thought sacrifice was another name for love. Without replying, he walked out into the afternoon sun. By dusk, he had packed what mattered: clothes, tools, his father's pocket knife, and a framed photograph of himself as a boy standing beside a horse on land that had long ago been sold. He left the house, the street, and the town without once checking the rearview mirror. He drove for hours through widening country roads where fences leaned tiredly and fields rolled into the horizon. The farther he traveled, the quieter his mind became. Past midnight, his truck coughed smoke and forced him to pull into a small settlement barely marked by a weathered sign. A general store stood dark except for one yellow lamp burning inside. An old man sat on the porch in a rocking chair, hat tipped low. "Truck trouble?" the man asked. "Something like that." The old man studied him with eyes pale as rainwater. "You look like a man outrunning more than an engine." Ethan might have laughed another time. Instead, he said, "Anywhere nearby to stay?" The man pointed toward a rise beyond the road. "There's a ranch up there. Empty house, working well, enough roof left to keep weather off your head." "Who owns it?" "I do." He paused. "For now." The old man introduced himself as Harlan Mercer. He spoke in no hurry, as if time had been retired years ago. The ranch, he explained, had belonged to his brother, then to debt, then back to him through tangled papers nobody cared enough to untie. "I'm too old for fences and repairs," Harlan said. "Been meaning to sell it." Ethan glanced toward the dark hill, where a silhouette of barn and house cut into the moonlight. "How much?" Harlan leaned back. $20. Ethan frowned. "For a ranch. For a burden." The old man's voice thinned. "Some places cost more to keep than to lose." Suspicion should have stopped him. But Ethan had just learned expensive things could be worthless, and cheap things could save a life. He pulled a wrinkled 20 from his wallet. Harlan took it, folded it once, and tucked it into his shirt pocket. Then he handed Ethan a ring of rusted keys. "One warning," the old man said. Ethan waited. "Whatever you find there, don't turn away from it." The ranch road was little more than twin tracks through weeds. His headlights revealed broken fence posts, a dry trough, and finally a sagging farmhouse beside a broad barn listing slightly to one side. The land smelled of dust and cedar. It was ruined, but it was his. Inside the house, rooms stood stripped of comfort, yet sturdy enough to endure. Ethan set down his bag, then heard it, a slow, rhythmic creak drifting through the night. The barn. He grabbed a lantern and crossed the yard. Wind pushed at the doors until one swung inward with a groan. Hay lay in moldering piles. Tools hung like shadows on the walls. Again came the sound, creak, creak, creak. He raised the lantern higher. At the center beam, a rope descended from the rafters. A young woman hung beneath it, head bowed, pale hair falling over her face. Her toes brushed a mound of hay, barely keeping the full weight from her neck. For one frozen second, Ethan could not move. Then instinct shattered shock. He lunged forward, climbed the hay, and lifted her body with one arm, while sawing at the rope with his father's pocket knife. The fibers snapped. They crashed to the ground together. She coughed violently, dragging air into bruised lungs. Ethan loosened the knot and rolled her onto her side. "Easy," he said. "Breathe." Her eyes flew open, clear gray, wild with terror. She shoved at him, scrambling backward through the straw. "No," she rasped. "No, let me go. You're safe." "I wasn't trying to be safe." She tried to stand, stumbled, and Ethan caught her before she fell. Tears streaked the dirt on her cheeks. She looked young, no more than 25, dressed in travel clothes now torn and dusted with hay. He steadied her, though she trembled with anger more than weakness. "Why?" he asked quietly. She stared at him as if he had stolen something precious. "Because," she whispered, voice broken raw, there was nothing left. The lantern flame flickered between them. Outside, wind moved across the dark fields like distant surf. Ethan, who had believed his own life finished only hours before, looked at the stranger he had dragged back from death. And for the first time since signing the papers, he felt something stronger than pain. Ethan guided the young woman into the farmhouse before dawn broke across the fields. She moved stiffly. One hand pressed her throat where the rope had left an angry red mark. Pride kept her upright more than strength. Twice she nearly stumbled, and twice she pretended she had not. Inside, the kitchen smelled of dust and old wood. Ethan lit a lamp, found a kettle, and rinsed it at the sink. The pump groaned, but delivered clear water. While it heated, he searched the cabinets until he found a tin of salt and a faded box of tea left behind by some former occupant. The woman stood near the door, watching him as if deciding whether he was rescuer or threat. "You can sit," Ethan said. "I'd rather stand. You nearly died an hour ago." I noticed. The sharpness in her tone might have offended him another day. Now it sounded like armor. He set the kettle aside and opened the small first aid kit from his truck. When he approached, she flinched, then held herself still. "I'm cleaning the scrape on your neck," he said. "Nothing more." She gave a stiff nod. The skin was bruised and abraded, but not deeply cut. Ethan worked gently. Up close, he saw she was younger than he first thought, though grief had aged her expression. Her hair, pale gold beneath the dirt, fell loose around narrow shoulders. Her hands were fine-boned, but her palms carried calluses that suggested she was not as delicate as she appeared. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated before answering. "Clara Whitmore." "I'm Ethan Cole." "I know." She glanced toward the keys on the table. "Mr. Harlan mentioned a man might come tonight." "You know Harlan?" "My grandmother did. She owned this ranch before debts took it." Clara looked around the kitchen with a strange mixture of sorrow and recognition. "I used to visit as a child." The revelation settled heavily between them. Ethan had bought a place she had come to die in. He handed her a mug of tea. She wrapped both hands around it, but did not drink. "Why here?" he asked. "Because no one would follow me here." Her mouth tightened. "And because I wanted the last place I remembered being happy." Ethan leaned against the counter. "What happened?" Clara stared into the steam. "I was supposed to marry Daniel Mercer in 3 weeks. His family owns half the banks in the county. Mine owns enough land to impress the right people. It was called a perfect match. And perfection was sleeping with my sister." The words were flat, stripped of drama by exhaustion. Yet the hurt beneath them was unmistakable. "I found him in our guest house," she continued. "My mother begged silence to avoid scandal. My father asked me to postpone the wedding quietly. My sister cried harder than I did. Daniel said it was a mistake caused by stress." She laughed once bitterly. "Apparently vows can be delayed, but humiliation must be immediate." Ethan recognized the hollow calm of someone who had cried until nothing remained. "I'm sorry," he said. "So am I." She looked at him then, truly looked, and saw something in his face. "You've been betrayed too." "My wife," he said, "with my closest friend." Clara's gaze softened by a degree. "Then you understand why breathing can feel insulting." He did understand. The world expected the wounded to continue as if trust were easily replaced. Morning light crept through the curtains, exposing the room's neglect. Dust silvered every surface. A chair leg was split. The floorboards needed sanding. The house looked like 2 people who had given up. Clara noticed where his eyes had gone. "You bought this place?" "For $20. Despite herself, she smiled faintly. Then you were cheated? It's possible. The smile vanished quickly, but its brief appearance altered the room. You should rest, Ethan said. There's a spare bedroom upstairs. I'm not leaving. I said rest, not leave. I mean the ranch. Her grip tightened on the mug. I have nowhere else I care to go. He considered the risks of sharing a broken house with a stranger who had nearly died in his barn. Then he considered the emptiness waiting if he sent her away. There's work here, he said. Roof leaks. Fences down. If you stay, you help. Clara lifted her chin. I can work. Good. Then we understand each other. They spent the day in practical labor that asked no personal questions. Ethan repaired a shutter while Clara swept years of dust from the downstairs rooms. She tied her hair back with a strip of cloth and attacked cobwebs with surprising ferocity. By noon, the kitchen table emerged from clutter. By afternoon, windows stood open to fresh air. When Ethan hauled warped boards from the porch, Clara appeared carrying the lighter end before he could object. You don't have to prove anything, he said. I'm not proving it to you. He almost asked to whom, but the answer was obvious. Later, she cooked eggs from a crate he had bought in town and seasoned them better than he would have believed possible. They ate in companionable silence. Silence between strangers can be awkward. Silence between the wounded can be relief. As evening settled, Clara stepped onto the porch and looked across the fields glowing amber beneath the setting sun. It's still beautiful, she murmured. It could be again, Ethan said. She turned toward him. You speak about the ranch or yourself? Depends on the day. This time her smile lingered. That night, Ethan spread blankets on the sofa and gave her the upstairs room. He listened to floorboards creak softly overhead, proof that another soul occupied the house. It should have felt intrusive. Instead, it felt less like ruin. Upstairs, a door opened, then closed. A moment later, Clara's voice drifted down the stairwell, quieter than before. Ethan, yeah. Thank you for stopping me. He looked at the dark ceiling and answered with equal honesty. Try not to make me do it twice. Weeks settled over the ranch like warm weather after a hard winter. What had first seemed abandoned now carried the rhythm of effort and intention. Ethan repaired the north fence post by post. Clara stripped old wallpaper from the bedrooms, opened curtains long-nailed shut, and coaxed life from a neglected garden beside the porch. Each improvement changed the house, but it changed them more. Pain had once defined every conversation between them, even the silent ones. Now other subjects took its place. They argued over paint colors, laughed when chickens from a neighboring farm invaded the yard, and shared meals without needing tragedy as an introduction. Ethan learned Clara disliked thunder but loved early mornings. She learned he whistled under his breath whenever concentrating and denied doing it when noticed. Neither spoke often about the people who had broken them. Those names lost power through neglect. One evening, while repairing a loose hinge on the barn door, Ethan glanced up to find Clara standing in the doorway with 2 mugs of coffee. Sunlight behind her made a pale halo of her hair. You missed supper, she said. I was finishing this. You say that about everything. She handed him a mug. Their fingers touched. The contact was brief, accidental, and far too noticeable. He cleared his throat. Doors fixed. Then perhaps you can learn to come inside when called. She walked back toward the house with the smallest smile. Ethan watched her longer than necessary. The truth had become difficult to ignore. The ranch no longer felt like an escape. It felt like a beginning. Yet beginnings were dangerous things for people who had trusted once and paid dearly for it. The danger arrived on a bright Tuesday morning. A sleek black car rolled up the dirt road, absurdly polished against the rough land. Ethan recognized Vanessa before she stepped out. She wore city clothes too elegant for dust and sunglasses too large to hide the calculation in her face. Clara, kneeling in the garden, straightened slowly. Vanessa removed her glasses. So this is where you vanished. Ethan set down the hammer in his hand. You shouldn't be here. That's no way to greet your wife. Ex-wife. She smiled thinly. Technicalities. Vanessa's gaze moved to Clara and lingered with open contempt. And who is this? Someone who belongs here more than you do, Ethan said. Clara's eyes flicked toward him, surprised. Vanessa laughed. Marcus left me. Did you know that? Turns out men who betray with you often betray you. She stepped closer. I made a mistake, Ethan. Come home. There is no home there. You always forgive. Her voice softened into practiced intimacy. That was your weakness. It was, he said. Not anymore. For the first time, her composure cracked. She looked past him to the repaired porch, the garden, the woman beside the roses. She understood that he had built something without her. Vanessa slid the sunglasses back on. Enjoy the fantasy, she said to Clara. He likes rescuing damaged women. She drove away in a storm of dust. Clara resumed, kneeling in the soil, but her movements were abrupt and careless. Ethan approached. Don't listen to her. What? Clara asked quietly. Because liars speak only lies? She wanted to wound you. She succeeded. He crouched beside her. Clara, I'm fine. The words ended conversation more effectively than shouting. By afternoon, another car climbed the road. This one carried Daniel Whitmore. He emerged tall, tailored, and confident in the way of men accustomed to doors opening before they touched them. He removed his gloves, saw Clara, and arranged his face into sorrow. There you are. Clara went pale. Ethan stepped onto the porch, but said nothing. Daniel approached her carefully. I've been looking everywhere. You should improve your aim, Clara replied. I deserve that. He glanced around the ranch. I deserve worse. But I came to make this right. You slept with my sister. A lapse. A disgraceful one. He lowered his voice. But not the measure of what we were. Clara's jaw tightened. Ethan hated that Daniel sounded sincere enough to be dangerous. Daniel continued. Your parents are frantic. The wedding can still happen. We can leave all this behind. All this? Clara asked, gesturing to the house, the fields, the months of healing. You mean honesty? He ignored the barb and looked toward Ethan. You've hidden yourself well out here. I wasn't hiding, Ethan said. Daniel's smile was courteous and cold. Of course not, though I imagine gratitude can be mistaken for affection. Clara stiffened. Ethan felt anger rise, but worse than anger was doubt. Daniel had money, history, and a life Clara had once chosen. Ethan had rough hands and a cheap ranch. That evening, Daniel rented a room in town and promised to return tomorrow for her answer. Silence ruled supper. Clara barely ate. At last, Ethan said, You should do what's best for you. She looked up sharply. That sounds noble. It's practical. No, she said. It sounds like distance. He had no defense because it was true. Fear had dressed itself as generosity. Night deepened. Ethan sat on the porch long after the lamps inside went dark. He imagined Clara leaving in the morning, returning to wealth, family, familiarity. Why wouldn't she? The ranch offered no certainty beyond hard work in him. When he finally entered the house, the upstairs room stood open. The bed was neatly made. On the pillow lay a folded note. Thank you for giving me back my life. I need to decide what it belongs to now. Clara. Ethan read it twice, then a third time. The room felt colder with each reading. Only then did he understand a cruel truth. Losing Vanessa had wounded his pride. Losing Clara had broken his heart. Ethan did not sleep. He read Clara's note until dawn whitened the window panes, then folded it carefully and placed it in his shirt pocket. The house felt stripped again, not because furniture was missing, but because presence was. Every repaired board, every cleaned room, every planted flower carried her mark. He saddled the old truck instead of the horse he did not own, turned the engine over twice, and drove toward town with a recklessness he had not felt since leaving his marriage behind. The station sat at the edge of town, with the tracks cut through open fields. It was a modest place of cracked concrete, a bench beneath faded paint, and a ticket window that opened only when trains were due. Clara stood near the platform with a single suitcase beside her. Wind tugged loose strands of hair across her face. Daniel stood several feet away, polished as ever, hands in his coat pockets, confidence arranged like a tailored collar. Ethan braked hard and stepped out. Clara turned first. Surprise crossed her features, followed by something more guarded. You came. I should have sooner. Daniel gave a short laugh. How dramatic. Ethan ignored him. Are you leaving? I haven't decided. That's because you keep letting men decide around you. Daniel said smoothly. Clara, enough of this theater. Come home. Your family is embarrassed, not angry. Time smooths these things. She stared at him. You think humiliation is wrinkled fabric. I think mistakes should not destroy futures. You mean your future? Daniel's patience thinned. I made one mistake. You made a choice, she said. He opened his mouth again, but another car rolled sharply into the station lot. Vanessa stepped out in dark glasses and city, heels unsuited for gravel. She looked from Ethan to Clara to Daniel and smiled as if delighted by the audience. This is getting crowded, Ethan said. I came to save you from yourself, Vanessa replied. Again, there's no need. There always is. She moved closer, voice lowering. You don't belong out here chasing damaged strangers. You belong with someone who knows you. You knew what I tolerated, Ethan said. That's not the same thing. Her eyes flashed. And she knows you? A woman you found hanging in a barn. Clara stiffened. Daniel glanced at her with quick curiosity. Vanessa continued, sensing blood. He collects broken things. Houses, fences, women. It makes him feel noble. The insult landed because it echoed Ethan's private fear. Clara looked at him, waiting. He could have defended himself with anger. Instead, for the first time in years, he chose honesty. When I found you, he said to Clara, I didn't save you because I was noble. I saved you because I knew what it was to think life had ended. The station seemed to quiet around them. I let Vanessa betray me because being needed felt like love. I'll let fear keep me silent with you because losing you scared me more than losing pride. He stepped closer. The ranch changed because you were there. I changed because you were there. Vanessa scoffed. Listen to yourself. No, Ethan said without turning. You listened for once. He faced his former wife fully. I was lonely with you. I'd rather be alone for the rest of my life than return to that. The word struck harder than shouting. Vanessa's mouth parted, then closed. For once, charm found no opening. Daniel straightened, recovering his poise. Touching speech. But speeches don't build futures. Clara, come with me. Security matters. Family matters. Love can be repaired. Clara regarded him with calm that had not existed months ago. You still think this is about being chosen. She lifted her suitcase. I'm not a prize delayed by inconvenience. Don't be childish. And there's the man I almost married. She set the suitcase down again, then turned to Ethan. When I left last night, I thought I needed to choose between my past and my rescue. Her eyes glistened, but her voice remained steady. I was wrong. I needed to choose myself first. Ethan said nothing. Some truths must finish in their own time. Clara took one step toward him. And now, she said, I could choose what comes after. She closed the distance and kissed him. It was not dramatic or practiced. It was certain. Vanessa muttered something sharp and strode back to her car. Daniel stood motionless for a moment, then gathered his pride like a coat and walked away without farewell. When the sound of engines faded, Clara laughed softly against Ethan's shoulder. I did buy a ticket, she said. Waste of money. No. She held it up, then tore it cleanly in half. Tuition. They drove back to the ranch with the windows open and dust trailing behind them like smoke from an old fire. Months passed in labor and season. The garden flourished. Travelers rented rooms in town and came to ride horses on neighboring land Ethan leased. Clara organized gatherings beneath lanterns strung across the yard. Word spread that the once-forgotten ranch had become a place where people celebrated beginnings. One autumn evening, Ethan led Clara into the rebuilt barn. The beam from which she had once hung had been removed entirely. In its place rose polished timber wrapped with white lights. What did you do? She whispered. Change the story. He knelt and opened a small velvet box. I bought this ranch for $20, he said. Best bargain of my life. But everything valuable here arrived later. Tears filled her eyes before he finished. Marry me, Clara. She laughed through the tears and pulled him to his feet before answering. Yes. Outside, wind moved gently across the fields. Inside, where despair had once taken root, two wounded hearts stood in the glow of a future they had built themselves.